All right. Who has not done the homework? Has everyone created the schema and created 3 projects and 3 experiences and a user in their seed file? Yes. Okay. With the migrate? Okay. Everybody that has not done that, we're going into the back room. So come here. Oh, there's no table anymore, so. Oh, I guess I could take this table. I bet that's where they took this table from. Oh, this isn't gonna work. Does this move?
You want to swing it back around this way?
That's my answer. You want to just lift it over the thing?
Okay, yeah, sure.
You think we can do that? How heavy do you think it is?
Oh shit!
Go up. Arian, you're going back with them. There we go. Yeah, everyone who has not done those things. What's up?
My first session.
Okay.
I got accepted on 24th. So
Okay.
we wanted to go.
Yes.
By the way, where can I check the requirements?
Wait, why are there so many people?
This is also if you couldn't get migrate to work, right?
Most of us cannot get the migrate command to work. Yeah.
You know what we'll show you guys? That's the only issue. Everybody go back outside.
Let's go. Let's go. You're just following
Wait,
us.
that is not you. Go back in there, bro. What are you doing, bro?
All right, I'm assuming that's everyone. Okay, for people who have had issues with the migration, it is a very simple fix. So in the root of your web dev directory, you're going to see this package.json file, and Windows is extremely stupid, so it doesn't understand semicolons. So all of these commands that I've been telling you that have been like fascinating you guys because you have no idea what they do, they're all defined right here. You'll see Prisma reset, Prisma generate, Prisma seed, Prisma migrate, all these things. This one specifically calls yarn Prisma migrate dev. And then what yarn Prisma migrate dev is it CDs into the src/backend folder. You're going to delete this semicolon after src/backend, and you're just going to replace it with 2 ampersands. And now you'll run it and it will work. And this is because Windows is the worst operating system ever created. And I'm sorry that you're in CS and having to use one. All right. Is there anybody? Yeah. I can delete that one. All right. Yeah, if you're on Windows, just delete all the semicolons and replace them with double ampersands. It'll still work for you on Mac too. I mean, we could just do that regardless. I didn't think it was an issue. I don't have Windows. All right. Yeah. Okay, that should fix everyone's issues with migrations. All Zach, and Harish, come in here. And Sean. Okay. You can take this short. All right. For everyone else, congratulations on making it to week 3 of Launchpad. You guys will now learn some really interesting stuff. We're going to be doing a lot of coding today. We're going to be coding basically our entire backend. And we're going to be doing that in Express, which is a JavaScript, a node framework for running a server. Express is an NPM package. NPM stands for Node Package Manager. And basically, the way that it works is our front end makes requests to our Express server. Express takes in the request and it gives it something as a response. That's how like the entire internet works, pretty much. You make a request and you get something back from wherever you requested from. And the way that we do this is through an HTTP request or HTTPS. Now it's HTTPS. The S only stands for secure. And it's basically a standardized way of communicating over the internet. So every HTTP request has a header and a body. And the most common ones that we use are get and post. There's also create and delete, but typically you can either just put create and delete under post, or they can be their own. It doesn't really matter. Get is for getting data. Post is for sending data. So if you need to create a project, create an experience, update a project, update an experience, you can put them under post. And then all Express endpoints have the rec and res, which rec is request, res is response. Just like an HTTP request, you make a request and you get a response. So Express mimics that. And you use the request to access the information, and then you use the response to send it back to the client. So gets are typically just a URL. You can make like a get request to server.com/users, and that would send back a list of all the users. Or you could send one to server.com/users/ and you have colon user ID. And colons in URLs are variable names. So user ID could be literally any string of characters. And it's going to interpret that as a user ID on the server end. It's the same with front end. If any of you guys have used React or if you guys have done any web development, you know, if you have a URL on like /user/2, it'll show you all the information for the second user or whoever's user ID is 2. For this example, it's 3. And in Express, you can access this by using rec.params.userid, and that will make more sense in a second. Posts are a little bit more complicated. Posts, you send data with a body parameter. So you might send a post request to server.com/create_user, and then you have a body object. Who here knows what JSON is? Who here doesn't know what JSON is? And some people don't know if they don't know what JSON is. JSON stands for Java something object notation, syntax object notation, JavaScript object notation. I don't know why I forgot that. But basically, and it's the same as TypeScript. You make an object in TypeScript by just having an open bracket and then some variable name followed by some value, and then you can have as many of those as you want in a single object. And it's a very readable way for humans to understand what is inside of a certain body or variable or whatever. Because you can see the name is Joe Smo, the email is js@gmail.com, and you can have an age 21. And then in Express, you access the body with rec.body and then whatever value you are trying to retrieve from the body. So basic Express. So to create an Express app, you basically just use the Express thing that you can import from the Express module, and that will create the app. And then to add an endpoint, you say app dot whatever HTTP method is going to be used for the request with the URL following that method. It can get a little bit more complicated when you have routers in Express, where you can have nested like categories of endpoints. So with Finish Line, we have a whole bunch of different like features that we have. So like we'll nest all of the features for the finance dashboard under the finance router, and then all of the endpoints for finance will just be off of the /finance endpoint. And you can group those together really nicely. We'll do the same thing in Launchpad with projects and experiences. So all of the project routes will be under the /projects, and then all of the experiences will be under /experiences. So here's an example. This is what we'll be making today. So routes in our backend specify the API that our front end will interact with. So the URL, and then what we expect as part of the body of the request, or no body in the request. So for our get projects router, it's a little bit complicated to figure out at first, but projects router is used in our root index.ts file, or in our root express file. And in that root express file, we declare projects router on the /projects endpoint. You guys will see that. We'll do that together. And then off of that, we can add on the projects router a /endpoint that when you make a GET request to /projects, it's going to return all of the projects in our database. And that's controlled by our controller, which we'll talk about in a second. Posts is a little bit more complicated because you have to take in more information. So off of the /projects endpoint, you're going to have /projects/new. If somebody sends a post request to that URL, our backend, our Express server, is expecting to receive an array of images. It's expecting to see a non-empty string that represents the title of the project. It's expecting to see a non-empty string that represents the description of a project. It's expecting a URL. It's expecting to either have a URL or to not have a URL because it's optional. If it does have a URL, it is expecting it to be of a URL form. So like https://URL. And then Express is a little tricky when it's using files or uploading files. You have to use this form data struct that doesn't actually allow for like the parsing of arrays. It's either just like a string or a file. So any additional parsing will have to be done inside of our controllers. This is unique. You don't have to worry about that, but there's a comment there explaining that. And then we have a function validate input, which validates that these things are all true. So it validates that title is a non-empty string. It validates that the description is a non-empty string as well. And then once we've done all that validation, we're going to send off that data to the project controller to create a project. So the controllers, this parses the input and it handles. So we're going to parse the user ID. This is what I was talking about earlier. We're parsing the user ID out of the rec.params.userid. And this syntax might be a little confusing. Can anybody tell me what the type of create project is? Anybody? No. How can I maybe give you a hint? It's a good hint, Alan. Yeah, no. All right. Well, a giveaway is coloring in the IDE. So create project is yellow. The same thing with validate inputs is yellow. Non-empty string is yellow. Body is yellow. So what is at a fundamental level? Yeah, it's a function. Yeah. Create project is just a function, but what's weird about this? Like, what do you normally expect when you see a function? Parentheses? Yeah. So like this is normal. Like we're calling non-empty string around body that is accessing skills. These are all function calls. This is not a call to a function. This is a reference to this function. So this function will be called, well, we don't actually know if this function will be called. We expect this function to be called. But we're not calling it here. We're passing this function in to this function, to this post function. So this post function can receive a function as well. Lots of functions. And this is an example of one of the functions. So get single user, all of the controllers will have the form, will have the signature of rec, which is a request, a res, which is a response, and a next, which is cut off. But I wonder, can I go back? Can I make this? Oh, you can kind of see it, but it's called a next function. But it's basically, that's exactly what it is. It's the next function to be called in our endpoint. And that's something that makes Express really, really powerful, is that we can, well, you guys don't have to worry about that, but that is a really nice thing to have. So what our controllers are doing is all they're doing is they're parsing any input we need out of the request, either from the params or from the body, and passing it in to our services. And services is another thing that we define. And then it's handling any errors. Does anybody have any questions? You guys will see very soon. I'm going through this very fast because it's going to be difficult. Even if I went slow, it would be very difficult to understand without doing it, I think. But then our services. So we can kind of see that the journey of an endpoint, it starts at the route, it goes into the controller, then it goes into the services, and then it goes back out to the controller, and it goes to the front end. So it's a, like any program, it's a stack, because you're calling functions, but it comes in from the route and it goes down to the services and then out back through the controller. And our services are what are responsible for handling all of the logic of our backend application. So all of our database interactions, Prisma, you guys all learned about that. We're interacting with our database. We're finding a user whose user ID is equal to the user ID that we're getting in. We're doing business logic. So if there's no user, we're going to throw an error because we couldn't find a user. But then if there is a user, we're going to transform it into the type that our front end expects using the user that we get from our database. All right. That was a lot of information, but we're going to do it together now. I'm also going to, bro, it was 72 when we got in here. Why am I so hot? But I'm hot. So many things. We're going to walk through and we're going to create the project routes, the controllers, the services, the transformers, and query args. Oh, give me PTSD right there. All right. So everyone open up Launchpad. And I'm on the wrong branch. Okay. Gonna make this nice and big. So in our backend SRC folder, we're gonna make a new folder called routes, a new folder called not under routes, but a new folder in SRC called controllers, and a new folder called services. We're also going to make a new folder called transformers and a folder called Prisma query args. It's fine. However, actually, yeah. In our routes, we're going to create a projects.routes.ts file. This is just a basic TypeScript file for the time being. And we're going to say const projects router equals express. Doesn't want to give me the import, but I think we say express dot router. What's up?
Wait, which directory did you create that in?
This is in the routes folder.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't find express. I can't remember if I have to do the. You can just import express from express. Why is this mad at me? Oh, what am I doing? Import express from express. There we go. And we can see we got our nice syntax. So we did this right. Off of the projects router, we're going to create a get endpoint on /projects, but we don't know that yet. Just on /. And then eventually we'll add the project controller here. So for the time being, we're just going to say projects controller dot get projects. We're going to leave that there. We also need, actually, we're going to start there. Not going to get ahead of ourselves. So next, if everybody has this, even bigger. Yeah. I can also get rid of this for the time being. Yes.
My screen, everything's like white for some reason.
You have to install the TypeScript extension in your VS Code. You also need the .ts file. Projects.controller.ts is the next file we're going to make in our controller folder. And here, we're going to export default class projects controller. And in here, we're going to have, you don't technically need to make it a class. I like classes because it kind of organizes things together. But all of our functions inside of our projects controller are going to be static. So it kind of defeats the purpose of a class. OD might get mad at you about this, but you could say static function get projects function. Am I stupid? Did I spell something wrong? What is wrong? Oh, I guess you don't even need function anymore. Just say static async. Cool. Static async get projects, and then you can say rec is going to be of type request. And make sure that when you get request, do not use the default request. This will get you. You have to use the express request. So if you have good IntelliSense, it'll pop up there. And it's the same thing for response. Don't use the default response. Use the express response. And then you need next, which will be a next function that's only an express. So, all right. From here, we're going to set up a try catch block. In our catch, we're going to get an error, but it's technically of type unknown. You don't have to worry about that now. And in here, we don't even need the request, do we? Oh, wait, we do. Do we? Don't technically need it. In here, we're going to call const projects equals await projects services dot get projects. We're going to leave that there for now. And now we're going to go into our services folder. We're going to create a new file called projects.services.ts. I guess service. Services. We can finish on with use services. And in here, we're going to do another stat export default class projects services. And we're going to do static async get projects. We don't really need anything for this for the time being. My hands are cramping. And in here, with our schema that we made last time, we're going to say const projects equals await Prisma. Make sure to import Prisma from /Prisma/Prisma. That's our Prisma client. We're going to say project dot find many. And if you don't supply any arguments into find many, it'll just get all of the projects in your database, which is what we want for the time being. And then we're going to take a second. We will catch up. And then eventually we're going to return the projects. But to do, we need to transform them. All right. Does everybody have this? Is this my computer? No. All right. I don't think people would get this question. Somebody tell me, does anybody know why? Does anybody know what to-do transform might necessarily mean? I don't think so. That'd be pretty impressive if you did. So our backend type is good. It's a project. It has all the primitive types. We learned that last time, that this project will have all of the values for each project that is not a relation. I learned that last time in the Prisma session. But we may not want to return. We might not want to either return all of those values to the front end, or we might want to transform them in some other way that the front end would rather have. So we're actually going to go ahead and make a shared type that the front end and the back end will agree upon. So you guys see this? You guys have all gotten this error, freaked out about it, but it's fine. We're going to make those now. So we have to make a folder for SR. This is in shared. So at the very bottom of your repo, you'll see a purple shared folder. It's all purple. VS Code knows that it is something that people use, so they color it. And in this shared folder, we're going to make another folder called types. And then in types, we're going to make a project.types.ts file. And here we're going to define the objects that our front end will be working with. So anything that our front end may need, we need to define here. For the time being, we're going to have it mimic our schema. So if I pull the schema up, you guys are going to learn some TypeScript languages, or some TypeScript syntax. We'll also need a user.types.ts, just like how we needed a user model in the schema. And actually, I think we're going to start with that. So we're going to say export interface. Interface. You guys have all heard of interfaces before in Fundies and in Fundies 1. You guys talk about like ILO. Actually, some of you guys did in the technical interviews ILO work packages and conslow work packages and empty work packages for the technical question. That was so funny to read. The amount of people who did that was really funny to me. It's totally fine. I mean, it's like, it's not wrong. It's just, you would never see that anywhere in an actual code base. But we could say export interface user. So this is kind of similar to just like the model syntax, but it's TypeScript. Export just means that we're allowing it to be seen by other files. And then interface is like a model or an object, just a TypeScript object. You can also use type. It's a little different. You could do some cool things with types. We'll talk about that later. But we're going to say an ID. It's going to be a string. An email is a string. Username is a string. Password. Oh, no, we don't have password. You guys don't have this. Never store your passwords as plain text. We just don't have passwords. Your role, we can say string, or we can define a role type. It doesn't really matter. I'm gonna define a role type. So here's the thing you can do with types. Well, no, I'm gonna do it with enum. You say enum role is going to be admin and guest. So very similar to before. You can also assign these string values here. You could say like, you could make it skibbity or something, but that wouldn't make any sense. At least I think you can. I could be lying there. We're gonna say this is of the type role. Title is a string. Bio is a string. Image URL is a string. GitHub link is a string. And the LinkedIn link is a string. And we're not going to worry about relations for the time being. We could, but we're not going to. And our project will be very, very similar. So export interface project. We have an ID, it's a string. Our title is a string. Our description is a string. Image URLs are strings. URL. URL string, skills, string. And then here we're not going to worry about the creator ID, but we are going to have a creator. And here we're just going to say it's of type user. We're actually going to have to import that from the user file we just created. We're also going to have deleter. Well, would the front end really care about the deleter? I don't think so, because we're not going to return it. And then I think that's good to start with. We can add the date times if we really need them, but for now, no. Now if we come back here, we're going to say that our get projects function returns a promise of a list of projects, not from Prisma, but we may have to explicitly import project from shared. And now we're going to get an error. This is the glory of TypeScript. We are returning something. We're saying that this function is going to return a promise of projects, but what are we actually returning? We're saying type, ID, title, string, blah, 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 is not assignable to a list of projects. Property creator is missing in type, ID, string. Why is property creator missing? Why is property creator missing? There can actually be like two reasons for this, but there's one big reason and then there's a slightly smaller other reason. Did I hear something? We didn't create a user? Not quite. Who remembers from the Prisma session what I talked about? Does anybody remember the word include from the Prisma session? What did that do? What did the include term do? Anybody? What's up? Yeah, exactly. So user is not a primitive type. User is a model that we have defined in our database. Prisma will not include that model by default. You have to explicitly tell it to include it. And the way that we do that is through the include word. So we can say include. I think it's like user created or created creator. Oh, it is creator. I think you guys might have it as something else. You guys might have it as like user created or something. But whatever the variable you named for the user being created, we're going to define that as true. Or the user who created the project, we're going to define that to be true. However, it's still mad at us. Why is it mad at us? Saying that creator.role are incompatible between these types. Type whatever is not assignable to type role. So type user is not assignable to type role. So there's a little bit of conflict between our front-end types and our back-end types. So the way that we solve these is through our transformers. And here we're going to start with a user.transformer.ts. And we're going to say that we're going to say export const user transformer. This is an arrow notation. So you can say equals and then a function. And we're going to say user. We're going to take in a user who's going to be of type prisma.user. Oh, the chances I remember this exact type name are very, very slim. User default args, prisma.user default args. And can we say extra args? Can we just say that? It's going to get, I can't say that. We're going to say that for now. So you can say that. And what this transformer is going to do is it's going to return a shared user. So our user from our shared, and now my shared is low. And we're saying a function whose declared type is neither undefined, void, nor any must return a value. Anybody tell me what they think this error message means? Let me give you a hint. The error message went away. Now the error message is back. Why is the error message back now? What are we saying about this function that we were not saying before? Exactly. We're saying that this function is going to return a user, but we are not returning anything. That will result in a TypeScript compilation error. You cannot do that. You have to return a user. And even if I return a user right here, it's going to give me an error. It's saying that you're missing all these roles. All right. We shouldn't be missing all these. So this is clearly not the right type. I'm going to quickly cheat and figure out what the right type is, because I can't remember off the top of my head. This is another thing. We have a lot of code in our code base. Please look at it. Look at all these transformers. We're making 2 transformers today. There's like 20 in here. And like each of one of these, look how big these things are. Jesus, they're huge. They're user get payload. So I was close. I like to think I was close. And in here, you have to supply type. And you can supply type if you want. Or you could say null for no additional things. And in here, we're getting the actual error that we want. This is the same error as before. Types role are incompatible. They're not really incompatible, but TypeScript thinks they are, because TypeScript is sometimes stupid. This is TypeScript notation. This is called the spread operator. So you can say ... variable or object, and then you can either add fields to the variable here, or you can override fields from it, or delete fields. You can do anything from here. It's so awesome. You could say ... user, and then we could say role, and we're going to say user.role, and then we're just going to force cast it to be a shared role, which we're going to need to export now. There we go, as role. And we can say share. Uh-oh. They don't sufficiently overlap with each other. Oh, did I say user and admin? I meant to say guest. Well, whatever. We could keep it as user. I feel like a user role is really bad. I'm going to change this to be guest. I don't know. Did I do guest with you guys before? Or did I do user again? Oh, Jesus. Still upset? This is slightly confusing. I would not expect this issue. Do I have to say? I think I do have to say guest. Maybe I was wrong. You do have to do this. Admin? I was. You do have to do that. Okay. Did you guys see what I just had to do? All right. I didn't realize this. By default, TypeScript defines enums to be numbers. So like this equals 0. You have to explicitly tell it that it's going to be a string. Did not know that. And that's something nice with types where you wouldn't have to do that. You can just say admin and guest. But okay, interesting. And now we're also going to define. All right, we are not going to get as far as I thought we were going to get. Project.transformer.ts. And we're going to say project transformer equals project. All right, who knows the type? Who knows the type for project? Oh, shout it out. Prisma dot what? I just figured this out. What was it? Yes. Prisma dot project get payload. And we're going to say no for now, but we're going to have to come back to that. And I forgot the const, I bet. This is going to return a shared project. So if we just return project here, we're going to get a lot of issues. Well, we're going to get one issue in particular. And it's the same issue we had before because this function is doing nothing. It's returning the same thing that you give it. But we need access. If we try to access project.user here, we're going to see we get, there's no user. There's updated at, oh, you guys don't have that. There's URL and there's image URLs. There's no user. And that's because all that this function knows is that it's receiving a type that is prisma.getProject, prisma.getProject get payload, prisma.project get payload. And that is literally just the raw get with none of the includes. So we're going to have to make a type that expects to also have the project creator. And in that, we can use query args. So we're going to say project.queryargs.ts here. We're going to say, well, I might have to look this one up too. I don't know the exact syntax. But export project query args equals, it's like prisma dot validator. Oh, I'm gonna have to look this one up too. It's prisma dot validator. It was validator. Oh, I should have stuck with my guns. Validator, and then here we can say project. This is where the project default args aren't they? Prisma, yes, this is where the default args are. Prisma dot project default args right here. And then this is some weird syntax. And now in here, export cons. Keep forgetting that. Here we can include things. So we can say include, and we're going to say creator true, just like what we did in the service function. But that is how you create a type for that to be able to be used in other parts of the application. And does anybody have a question on why we needed? I'm going to go back because there's no way that you guys read that. And I couldn't even remember the syntax. But this is the syntax. You don't really have to worry about the syntax. It's all the same. Like, it's all going to be model name and then default args for all the query args. And then it's going to be, and like if I forgot that, you can just look at one of the ones that exist in Finish Line and you'll see that. Or in Launchpad and you'll see that. Yeah. And in here, if we go back and we now say type of project query args, we can now access the creator. Oh, I guess it wasn't user, but you couldn't do that before. I'll show you. You just say null. There's no creator. There's creator ID, but there's no creator. And now we're going to do the same thing that we did with the user. We're going to say project, but we're going to say the user or the creator is going to have the user transformer with the creator. No, with the project.creator. There we go. Now you know you've done it right. In JavaScript, you would have no idea. None of those errors would have happened. It would have totally let me completely fuck everything up. But TypeScript nagged at me and said, what you're doing is stupid. And I listened, and now I have something that will actually work every time that you do it. It will always work. It is so nice. But yeah, I can close this now. This is kind of in the way. That looks much better. People understand what a transformer is? Generally, no. What it did? No. 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 Alan, do you understand what a transformer is? Alan understands what a transformer is. Kyle, do you understand what a transformer is? Okay. I don't know what. It's taking this project, which is a Prisma project get payload that includes whatever these project query args are, and it's transforming it into this type. It's taking this type and transforming it into this type. That is all it is doing. And it does that, and we use that, it's very simple, by the spread operator. And then the errors will tell you what you need to do, but we also know what we need to do. This is a very simple transformer. And you'll see in Finish Line that we have lots and lots and lots of very complicated transformers with lots of query args, lots of nested query args. And then finally, we get down to an unnested query arg. You have to be careful to not cause cycles, though, because that's not good. Database will not like that. You don't have to worry about that. And now what we can do is map each project with the project transformer. Oh my goodness. Did I spell it wrong? That would be so funny. Project transformer. I spelled it wrong. Project transformer. And now look, this type is happy too. So we've gotten the projects and now we've returned them into a type that we know the front end will expect every time. We don't have to worry about anything getting fucked up in the HTTP request and the front end getting something that it thinks it has, but it doesn't actually have, and then returning a null or an undefined exception, which happens all the time at my current co-op because they use JavaScript and not TypeScript. One other thing we're going to want to do here is we don't want to include deleted projects. So we can actually specify in our query where, what is it? Deleted at, I think you guys have date deleted, is null. So we're getting all of the projects which have not been deleted because we have not set the deleted at endpoint yet. All right. This went on way, way longer than I thought it was going to go on. So we're probably going to spend multiple weeks in the back end. But in here, you can now take that. And in here, you can take the project services. And we can also say that this is going to return a promise of, actually, does that? No, that's not what that returns. You have to return res.json with the projects that we're returning. So this is basically saying in our response, then do you have to say send? You might have to say send. You can say send as well. I think if you say JSON, it also sends it. And then in our errors, we're just going to go next with the error. And now I'm getting a thing that not all code paths return a value, but you can just say return next. And now you have created your first endpoint that if somebody were to ping, well, actually, all right. Who has gotten all of the code I've written so far? And I feel like there are places that maybe people have missed everything. But does everybody have what I've coded? What did we miss? The what?
I lost
a good amount. This is the first time that we've done Launchpad. I anticipated doing 3 endpoints today, with you guys also doing 3 endpoints today. So that was a vast overestimation of the amount of time this would take. So we're gonna have to adjust the schedule based off of that. This might seem like a lot. The first time's always the hardest. But all of the endpoints follow this exact pattern, like route, controller, service function. Service function interacts with the database. Controller sends it on the res. This is basically it. So you'll see when we do the other endpoints, the route and the controller are essentially just boilerplate. And you can copy and paste it. But the service function is where you actually do the logic. It might be slightly complicated, but this is a very simple endpoint. Doesn't really do anything other than return the projects in the database. But I can't believe we're already out of time. But next week we'll actually create projects. And if you wanted to test it, the last thing you would need to do is go to your index.ts file and just say in here, like under this app.use, actually above the app.use star, app.use, and then on /projects, we're going to add the projects router, but we also need to export the projects router. Why are you upset? Declaration or statement expected? Oh, say default. Look at that. Thank you, Kyle. And now we can import the projects router. And now if I Ooh, this is still not gonna like this, but I might have to just comment this out. A yarn start. We're gonna see we have a port listening on 4001, and if we go to a new incognito tab, and we go to localhost : 4001/projects. Authentication failed. Not logged in. Dev. That is true. I am not logged in. I'm not going to teach you guys Postman today. That'll take another 30 minutes. But yeah, for homework, everybody just do the get experiences endpoint. So it's going to follow this exact same pattern. This code, I recorded this entire meeting. I'll be posting everything. But this is web dev. You guys will learn.